It started with one of those family dinners where everything looks perfect, but you can feel the tension sliding under the table. Like a snake no one wants to mention. Mark and I had only been married for about a year. His parents, Mr. and Mrs. Walker, always insisted we come over every Sunday night. Like clockwork. No excuses. They acted warm, polite, charming, even. But there was always this quiet undertone, like they were waiting for me to slip, to prove I wasn't really one of them. That night, I knew something was off. The second they asked me to help serve dessert, instead of staying at the table, Mrs. Walker leaned in as we plated the pie, lowered her voice, and smiled that brittle kind of smile that never reaches the eyes. "You've done such a great job with the apartment," she said. "Jessica's going to love it." I blinked. "Excuse me?" She looked surprised as if this had already been decided. "Oh, Mark didn't tell you." We all agreed. It's only fair Jessica has a fresh start. And since you and Mark already have the house now, the apartment's just sitting there, like it was some spare closet. My hands froze over the whipped cream. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I genuinely thought she was joking. The apartment, the one I bought before I even met Mark, with my own savings, after years of working 2 jobs and skipping vacations, that apartment was mine, legally, financially, emotionally. But Mrs. Walker wasn't joking. Jessica's had such a hard year, she continued, as if I hadn't just stared her down with a look sharp enough to cut tile. She just needs some stability. And you're already doing so well. That's what they always said when they were about to take something from me. I took a slow breath. "Mark and I never discussed this," I said. "Oh, sweetheart," she chuckled. "He's fine with it. We all agreed. It's what family does." My heart pounded. They thought it was a family asset. They thought it belonged to us. But they didn't know the one detail. That changed everything. I never added Mark to the deed. Not because I didn't trust him. But because I worked damn hard for that place. And something in my gut always told me, keep it separate. Turns out, that gut feeling was right. I didn't argue. Not right away. Because sometimes silence is louder than any confrontation. I finished serving dessert, sat back at the table, smiled when Walker said how proud he was, of how far we'd all come as a family. But inside, I was already flipping mental switches, checking documents, scanning emails, and replaying every time Mark had casually said things like, "Our apartment, the one we can use if Jessica needs a reset. It's no big deal." Maybe it wasn't a big deal to him, but to me, it was everything. I built that home with calloused hands and zero help. I decorated it with clearance finds and stubborn pride. I cried the first night I slept on the floor with no furniture, and smiled the first morning I made coffee from a kettle I bought with coins. That place was my independence in drywall form, and they were planning to hand it over like a party favor. On the ride home, I didn't speak. Mark didn't notice. He was too busy talking about how happy his mom was, how Jessica deserved a win, how it would be just temporary. "Haley," he said, "you have to admit it's the right thing. We barely use the apartment anymore." I turned to him slowly. "We?" He blinked, then smiled, like he'd caught himself in an awkward slip. "I mean, you know what I mean." But I didn't think he did, and I didn't correct him. Instead, I nodded. Let him keep talking. Let him keep assuming, because the more he underestimated me, the easier this would be. Ta-ta. The next morning, I made coffee, smiled, packed my bag, and drove to the apartment. When I got there, I changed the locks, called my lawyer, sent him updated documentation, and waited. It took exactly 3 days before the next call came. It was a Thursday afternoon when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Local area code. I picked up. Hi. Is this Haley? The voice was confident. Female. Too friendly. Yes. Who's calling? This is Michelle, Jessica's friend. She just moved in, and I'm outside with some of her boxes. Could you buzz us in? I paused. Let the silence hang just long enough to curdle the mood. I'm sorry, I said. No one named Jessica lives there. A beat. Then she laughed. Oh, you must be confused. This is the apartment her parents set up for her. No, I said flatly. This is the apartment I own. Privately. Legally. And your friend has no permission to be there. I hung up. 5 minutes later, my doorbell camera lit up. Jessica was standing there, holding a potted plant, and looking absolutely stunned. A stranger opened the door my tenant, because 2 days earlier, I'd signed a lease with a law student named Dana. I didn't need the apartment, but I needed the Walkers. To know exactly what I was willing to do, that evening, I got a furious voicemail from Mr. Walker. How dare you rent it out? We had an agreement. No, we didn't. Mark came home tight-lipped, didn't even take off his shoes before launching into it. You blindsided them, he hissed. You humiliated Jessica. I didn't flinch. She showed up to a property that doesn't belong to her, with keys she wasn't given, and plans no one asked my permission for. He opened his mouth, closed it. You rented it just to prove a point. I stared him down. No, Mark. I rented it because I could, and because your family needed a reminder that I am not part of their furniture. He didn't speak to me for the rest of the night, which was fine. I liked the quiet. The next week, Mrs. Walker invited me to lunch. No Markin, just us. We met at a charming cafe she always chose. Because it was discreet, she smiled when I arrived. But her tone was clipped. I just don't understand, she said, stirring her tea like it had insulted her. We always assumed that apartment was part of your joint assets, because you assumed I had no assets of my own, I replied. She blinked. I leaned in. I bought that place 5 years before I met your son, with my own money, my own name, my own damn strength. A silence passed. Tight. Cracking. Then she said, well, it would have been nice to tell us. I smiled. I guess it would have been nice if you'd asked. And that's when I knew. She didn't want the apartment. She wanted the power. But now, she couldn't reach it. Jessica didn't speak to me again, which was fine. 2 months later, she moved out of her parents' house and into a condo. They co-signed. I heard she dropped out of grad school. Mark's attitude shifted too. He stopped saying we when referring to my things. Started checking before inviting his family over. Started realizing I wasn't here to be absorbed. One night, as we brushed our teeth, he asked quietly, did you always plan to keep that place for yourself? I looked at him through the mirror. No, I said, but I'm glad I did. He didn't reply. But for the first time in weeks, he reached for my hand, and for the first time in months, I let him. Life moved on. Quieter, sharper. The Walkers never mentioned the apartment again, and slowly, their sense of entitlement cracked. They asked now, not assumed. They invited, not dictated. It was subtle, but it was real, and it didn't come from yelling, or fighting, or begging. It came from a locked door, and a stranger who opened it. I started visiting the apartment every few weeks, just to walk through, to touch the old doorknobs, to feel the weight of my own history. Dana kept it tidy, respectful. She left a sticky note on the fridge once. Thanks for trusting me with this place. It read, you have great taste. I smiled, not because of the compliment, but because she knew what others had forgotten. This space was earned. One afternoon, Mark met me at the apartment. He stood in the doorway, like it was the first time he really saw it. It's beautiful, he said. I didn't respond. Just let him look. He walked slowly, paused by the window I used to sit beside during storms, touched the tile I laid by hand in my old kitchen. When he turned back, his voice was softer. I get it now, he said. It wasn't about the apartment. No, I said. It was about who I had to be to get it, and who I refused to stop being just because I got married. He nodded, and for the first time, I saw the boy I fell in love with, not the man shaped by his family, but the one still willing to unlearn. Weeks passed, then months. Jessica emailed me once. Just a sentence. I didn't know it was yours. I'm sorry. I didn't reply, not because I was angry, but because some apologies are best left echoing. Mrs. Walker sent a birthday card that year. Inside, she wrote, "You've made quite a home." There was no mention of Jessica, or the apartment, or anything she might once have tried to control. Just a single line, from someone who finally understood that respect isn't given, it's earned, and if withheld, it's enforced. Today, the apartment still stands. Same windows, same stubborn lock, same heartbeat. It's rented now, to a quiet girl who reminds me a little of me, and sometimes I leave a note in the mailbox with nothing but one word, yours, because the real victory was never keeping the apartment. It was remembering who I was before anyone tried to take pieces of me in the name of family, and learning that the strongest doors don't just keep people out, they remind them you were never theirs to begin with. Not all wars are fought with raised voices. Some are won with closed doors. And one word. No, this wasn't a story about real estate, or inheritance, or in-laws. It was about boundaries, the ones we draw with quiet grace and defend with unshakable fire. I didn't need to scream, or argue, or seek permission. I just had to remember who I was before they tried to tell me who I should be. So if you're listening, and someone's reaching into your life with hands that don't belong, don't fight them. Just lock the door